Science Film Festival happening in Goa from 16th of Jan to 19th of Jan. And today we have here a very eminent personality, one of the ambassadors of Ayurveda, Dr. Rama
Jayasundar.
Dr. Rama Jayasundar. Knowledge is a continuous process of perseverance. Out of the thirst and crave for knowledge, Dr. Rama has attained this position of being a doctor as well as a scientist. She is not only a doctor who treats a humankind, a mankind, but also she has done a lot of research in physics in the field of NMR and spectroscopy. Today, for this festival, we are fortunate enough to have her as our inaugural guest, chief guest, and for me it is a big opportunity to discuss with her today and enlighten ourselves with her work and the research that she is doing. We welcome you, ma'am, for this Science Film Festival. As you must have heard that Goa is a beautiful land with beaches, with nature. People come here as a holiday destination. Also, I would like to add on to this as far as Ayurveda is concerned, because Ayurveda was recognized in Goa even at the time of Portuguese regime. It was taken as the government medical system, and there is a statue which is very much rare in any of the states of India, erected in the city of Ponda by Dr. Dada Vaidya. So I welcome you, ma'am, again to this festival and for this program. As we all know, people nowadays almost have no answers for chronic as well as acute illness through modern science. So there is a big hope they are searching for through other integrated practices or other medical sciences, and Ayurveda gives them a bigger opportunity to rely upon. Taking this fact into consideration, Ayurveda is getting more and more popularized, and the journey that you have begun from your career from a physicist, then stepped into studying Ayurveda, did a full-time course of 5.5 years by taking leave from AIIMS, also getting awards for different published papers as a Young Scientist Award for the RF instrument that you have developed. I would like to just know what made you take up this journey from physics to Ayurveda for it.
Thank you for inviting me here. It's an absolute delight for me to be in Goa, and it's such a beautiful city. And for something like a science festival where science is celebrated,
Yes.
and I think it's the apt atmosphere, and I'm very happy to be here. This is a question that's so very often asked, that what made me do Ayurveda after having done a PhD in physics in the field of NMR, which stands for nuclear magnetic resonance. It's a long story, but to cut it short, although my PhD, so I did my PhD in physics in the field of NMR from Cambridge University, UK. And then I switched over to biomedical NMR. So I was into biomedical physics and trying to apply the knowledge I had gained through my PhD and the expertise as well to applications related to clinical medicine. So at some point in time, I felt that I should have a medical degree, that I can't really do research on borrowed knowledge, that having a medical degree myself would give me a better insight into the problems I'm trying to look into. So my work basically was identifying a clinical problem and developing a technique, NMR technique, which involved a lot of physics, and then applying whatever I have developed to the
To the
clinical
clinical
problem,
practice.
either to understand the pathophysiology better or to improve the diagnosis.
Okay.
So which is why I felt that I should have a medical degree. So my initial interest was in doing MBBS. So if at that point in time somebody had told me that I would be doing Ayurveda, I would have laughed at them, because I have, the thought had not even,
Touched your mind.
yeah, absolutely. And so it was, so 93, I decided I want to do medicine. And I took a year to decide whether I really want to do, because I had a family and, my daughter was small, and I was doing fairly decently well in my field. So I took a year to decide, convince myself that no, I want to do medicine, and then started the journey of trying to find out, how to go about it. And I met a very simple problem, but it's a problem which it took me 9 years to solve that problem.
Wow.
So it's very simple as I didn't have a plus 2 biology.
Okay.
So I belong to those days when we do 11 years of schooling.
Yeah, 11 years.
Then we have 1 year of pre-university in the college where we study 3 subjects. So it's either maths, physics, chemistry.
Yes. Or
You go into either engineering or maths or physics or chemistry, or physics, chemistry, biology, where you go into the medical stream.
Yes.
And the biology stream. So I did maths, physics, chemistry in pre-university and went on to do my BSc, MSc and PhD in physics. So I didn't have a plus 2 equivalent of biology, which is a prerequisite for medicine,
yes.
right? So this was the simple problem, and as I said, it took me a good 9 years to solve this problem. But even as I was, I couldn't believe that, I really, this is such a rigid prerequisite, and that I will not be able to do medicine without this. People also did not give me the correct information, and they said that, you write to this committee, you write to that committee. And so even as I was trying this, I decided I will do, why not do Indian system of medicine?
Okay.
Because my intention in doing medicine was not to go into practice.
Yes.
So it was more for research.
Yes. So any obstacles which were really making you feel a little tough through this journey?
Well, I think the major obstacle was this prerequisite for plus 2 biology, which didn't go away at all, and which I couldn't convince any committee to waive this prerequisite of. And the other obstacle was, of course, the mentality of the people. So nobody gave me the correct information that, without this you simply cannot do Ayurveda. Nobody gave me that information. So they kept shifting me from one committee to the other, and that's how these 9 years went by. I was writing from one committee to the other. Each committee used to take about a year or year and a half to say that without plus 2 that they don't have the power to actually waive this prerequisite. Finally in 2001, I realized, after a good 7 years or so, I realized that without plus 2 biology, I simply will not be able to do medicine. So I did what I could have done 7-8 years ago. I did plus 2 biology. So I was 40 at that time, and that's another story as to how I, managed to do plus 2 biology. I will not go into the details of it. I will reserve it for me maybe for another time. But I did plus 2 biology through National Open School, and sat for the All India level medical entrance exam, which is common for all streams of medicine. So for MBBS, homeopathy, Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, it's the same common entrance exam. So I sat for the entrance exam, and I'm very happy to say that I got the 7th rank. I'm very proud of that, because I remember before the exam I really panicked, and because I felt that I couldn't remember anything. This is an exam that 18-year-olds go through, and the amount of information that needs to be retained, and also the quickness. You don't have time to think in these exams. I panicked at the last moment, and then I said, I anyway have my job, there is no reason for me to even attempt this. And then finally it was my husband who said, no, you have come this far, you have to write
Go
the
for
exam.
it, yeah.
So I wrote the exam, and it was not as bad as I thought, and I came out with fairly decent flying colors. And so because I got very good rank, I also got admission for MBBS. I opted for Ayurveda. At that point in time, I really did not know what I am going to study in Ayurveda. I have absolutely no background in Ayurveda. It's not that I come from a family of Ayurvedic physicians. It's not that I had used Ayurveda or some of my family members have used. So I didn't have any idea about Ayurveda. But I can tell you that there was a small triggering point for this when I think back now. So I had come across a paper which talked of effect of Sankapushpi on memory of mice. So it was a small experiment done where Sankapushpi, the extract of Sankapushpi was used to administer to mice to see if there is improvement in their memory. So the result said that there was no improvement in the memory, and that the claims of Ayurveda or whatever Ayurveda claimed was not true. Now there was a jarring note somewhere. I didn't know Sanskrit. They said that the Sankapushpi is a Medhya, right? I didn't know enough Sanskrit to even understand what exactly Medhya means. But what I did was I contacted a Sanskrit a teacher, and I asked what Medhya is, whether Medhya and memory are the same. He said, no, it's entirely different. So then I met this group who published this paper, and I wanted to know who is the Ayurvedic doctor, who had helped them with this. So they said that we don't have Ayurvedic doctor, and what is the need? So that was very jarring for me. Because I said, see, you are doing research in Ayurveda, that's what you say, but how is it that without Ayurvedic collaborator that you are doing? So he said, all the information is available, we got this from the translation. And I told them that, look, you're looking probably for the wrong parameter, because Medhya is not memory. Medhya it has a more deeper meaning. And so probably this was the triggering point. And I felt that this is definitely not the way to do Ayurveda, and just to dismiss something by looking at the wrong parameter. And so probably, as I said, this probably was a triggering point for me to get interested in Ayurveda. I really wanted to know, as a scientist, I wanted to know what is there, right? And so, when I started, I had absolutely no idea what was going to be taught as well. So I told myself that I will give myself a year and a half. And if I find the subject very unscientific, very empirical, I thought I will shift over to allopathy. I didn't do. So how I'm looking at the subject. So when I studied, it was a learning experience for me in all ways, because I was 41 years old when I started this 5.5 years undergraduate medical degree. And my classmates were all the age of my daughter, 18 years. So it was really fun getting back to a school that, but there were also a lot of logistical issues. I am so used to giving lectures and teaching students to sit on the other side, and sit through lectures for 6 hours and taking notes. It was a very different experience, and a very, very difficult task as well. And the other problem I faced was by hearting the shlokas. So I did my BA MS in Sri Jayendra Saraswati Ayurveda College in Chennai, and we had a very interesting set of teachers. We had teachers from northern part of the country, from Orissa, from Calcutta, from even Himachal Pradesh, from Karnataka, from Andhra, from Tamil Nadu, from Kerala. So it gave me a bird's eye view of how Ayurveda was looked at and taught in different parts of the country. So the teachers from Kerala, they laid a lot of emphasis on by hearting the shloka. And that was very difficult, having studied physics, I never had to by heart anything. So, you just understand the fundamentals, and then it becomes, it's easy for you to talk about it or write the exams, So I never had to by heart anything. So by hearting and memorizing was never my strong point. And 40 plus, it's never the strong point of anybody, I suppose, you know,
Yes,
where
yes.
it's a age where things start declining.
Yeah.
So it was, that's something that I found very difficult. So the first shloka I by hearted was 2 lines, and it took me a good 10 days to by heart. And in my school days and college days, I have always excelled in the academics, and it was not. I mean, I had to excel at the age of 40 as well. So for me, exams, class tests were very, very serious for me, and every exam I used to curse myself. Did I do the right?
Right thing.
Did I take the right decision? Because it was. By hearting and remembering, retaining, and kind of the kind of exam systems we
Yes,
have.
yes.
It's rote learning, and then you need to reproduce things. So but it also gave me I learned something about myself, that I can keep pushing my limits. What I thought I couldn't do, I realized that I could still do, and I really had to work hard. So I kept pushing the limit of my capabilities. It was a big experience for me, and it gave me, in a way, a lot of confidence
Confidence.
that there is nothing that's
Impossible.
impossible. And it's freeing your mind of the inhibitions you have, and then and the hard work. Nothing
Yes.
happens without hard work, and that's what I learned. And it was a very big lesson for me. And when I was studying Ayurveda, there was something that, while it was a learning curve for me, it also made me very, very sad that we are sitting on a treasure house of information and knowledge, scientific knowledge, and we are not even aware of what we have. And that Indians don't deserve to be unhealthy at all, right? So we have so much experience and wisdom, which has been collected and documented systematically over years. Why are Indians unhealthy like this? And why are we not using the wisdom that the Ayurvedic acharyas have, so methodically, documented and given to us? So this is something that left me very, very sad as well. So this is the kind of what I wanted to share with the viewers as well, and uh, probably this will inspire at least some people that there is nothing that's impossible, and there is no age to study.
Ma'am, I have read a lot of research papers on quantum physics that you have done. So, could you please elaborate more on this? Because physics is more of fundamental science, and as you said earlier, that in Ayurveda it is very difficult to actually measure, or there were no parameters at that time to measure, like the difference between medhya and memory is, there is a lot of difference. It cannot, memory cannot represent medhya, neither medhya can represent memory. So, what made you do this research, and how it helped actually to uh, bring up more clarity in Ayurveda?
A small correction. So I have not, my research work has not been exactly in the field of quantum physics. So my work has been in the field of NMR, which is nuclear magnetic resonance. It's an application of quantum mechanics.
Okay,
Okay, so to that extent, so I have that connection
connection.
with quantum mechanics. Uh, so the so NMR is a. I have done some experimental NMR. I have also done theoretical development, which means that it involved quantum mechanics and all. And so when I started studying Ayurveda, of course I ran into a lot of problems because I'm trained uh, to think objectively
Yes.
and objective measurements of parameters. So numbers are something that I'm very comfortable with.
Yes.
So we do experiment, we measure something, and then you get some numbers out, and then you
Yes.
make a logical inference. So that's the kind of training I have had. That's what I had been doing for over 20 years. Now for me to
Shift
switch over to
yes.
Ayurveda, which was So like although it was in the field of biology, biomedical NMR I was doing, you know, it's still the biological system is understood in terms of structures, right, which are all, you know, measurable parameters and things like that. So suddenly, you know, I found myself in a science which is in one sweep, you know, it's talking about consciousness, it's talking about a psychological domain, and about physiology and structures and physiology. I was, although the terminologies used were very different, I was very comfortable. Coming into the psychological domain was interesting, right, because nobody denies mind. But then, you know, into the domain of consciousness, and you know how this is an integral part of health, how Ayurveda, so that was very difficult for me to understand, and also I won't say appreciate, you know, being brought up in, you know, in the Indian culture, you know, certain things come to you naturally, you know, so you don't really have to put your finger and say that, you know, this is something I do not know. So these are all familiar terms. But then, you know, as a scientist, and you know, when I'm trying to do research, and which means that I'm doing experiments, it's not theoretical research, it's experimental work, I'm looking at tangible parameters which can be measured. So that's where I run into problem. But what I do is, because of this connection, that all these four domains, like, you know, you have the structural domain, physiological, psychological, unconscious, because all these four domains are connected with each other in Ayurveda. Any measurement you make in anywhere, or any perturbation you give to in any domain, will have the repercussion in the other domain. So you can actually measure the repercussions, and then you can draw a logical inference. So that's what I do. And it's also not true that Ayurveda does not have parameters. It cannot be a medical science if it does not have parameters. So the Ayurvedic doctors diagnose, right? They don't diagnose using modern technology. They have their own parameters. So you know, they are all parameters. Maybe they are talking about parameters which are not
measurable, and
which are not measured in modern medicine. But nevertheless, they have parameters. These are all tangible parameters. In fact, my research focuses on objectivizing these parameters that Ayurveda talks about. So we have a methodology to study Ayurveda on its own terms. So just like you don't try to understand physics using chemistry. So if you are in the lab, physics lab, there are certain rules and regulations, there are certain terminologies that's used, and you only use those, right? Chemistry lab is entirely different. What you do there is different. So if you are trying to do research in Ayurveda, if you are trying to understand Ayurveda, then you know you have to use its own parameters. So you can't understand physics in terms of chemistry, not chemistry in terms of physics. So physics has to be understood on its own terms. Similarly, Ayurveda has to be understood in using its own parameters. So my research focus is to see if I can objectivize these parameters.
In the field of Ayurveda.
Yeah. And I use modern tools, modern techniques. These are just instruments. These are, of course, developed in a particular context, but they can be used for, you know, either studying allopathic problems or Ayurveda, as long as you know where to tweak the technology.
Ma'am, you also said that it took 10 long days, for example, to remember that shloka. So would you reiterate for us that shloka?
I can tell you the first three words. It's the first shloka from Ashtanga Sangraha. So it starts off with Ragadi Roga Haha. You are telling it right.
Madam, a lot of people have an ideology that Ayurveda is a traditional system of medicine. A lot of people even say that it is an alternative system, or it comes as a part of tradition in our culture. But I, being an Ayurveda practitioner and a student, I definitely know that Ayurveda is scientific. So how could you elaborate more on this, that Ayurveda as science?
It is there in the name itself. Ved means science. So it's the science of life.
Ayur is life, and
Ved is science. So the word science is inbuilt into Ayurveda. See, science is always a continuum. it doesn't happen at any particular point in time. So knowledge is a continuum, it's a continuous process, and at different times periods, different countries were leading the science. So at that point in time, in ancient times, India was leading with the Vedic sciences, and now it's the time when the Western countries are leading. But science is science, and you see, I know that the one of the reason why people think Ayurveda cannot be a science is because we didn't have the technological advances we have now. So obviously it was not, definitely was not there in those days. See, but people should understand that what makes a subject science is logic in it,
Yes.
right? So you have
And the
mathematics.
results.
Yes, you have mathematics, you have theoretical physics, you have theoretical chemistry, where not a single experiment is done. Isn't mathematics science? No technology is used,
Yes.
right? How is
Just
it a
logic.
science? Logic. So a subject is, as long as there is an inbuilt logic in it, it's a science. And then, Ayurveda is a clinical medicine, right? All said and done. And does it, the proof of the pudding lies in eating, right? So there is a patient with some problem. He or she goes to the Ayurvedic doctor. Is the doctor able to diagnose it and give a
Treat it.
treatment in sync with the diagnosis? Is the patient responding? Is the patient getting cured? Yeah. This happens day in and day out. Just because people are not aware of what is happening, it doesn't mean they cannot discredit something about which they do not know. I think that's very unscientific.
Yes.
People who do not know about Ayurveda, there's
Yeah,
no
they
way
just say that I don't believe this, or
No, they
I
cannot.
haven't heard about it. What is it about?
No, everybody need not know everything.
Yes.
But without knowing a subject, you cannot say it's scientific or unscientific. That it's a very unscientific, approach. Okay. So Ayurveda is, so my understanding of Ayurveda is basically from the clinic. And I have seen very difficult, complicated cases, being treated in a very logical manner by Ayurvedic doctors and producing reproducible results as well. So then I started working back. Then I tried to understand what exactly Ayurveda was, and then uh, I realized that it's a different way of looking at, it's a different perspective of the biological system. Our biological system is a very complex system. There is more than one way of looking at it. Even a simple number like 1, there are umpteen ways you can approach 1. 0 plus 1 is 1,
Yes.
0.9 plus 0.1 is 1, 0.5 plus 9.5, 0.95 is 1, right? 0.95 plus 0.05 is 1. So there is more than one way of approaching the same subject.
Yes.
And when you have a system as complicated as a human system, I mean, there must be more than one way of. So modern medicine is one way to look at it. It's not the only way. Now, Ayurveda looks at the same system in a different perspective,
Yes.
and I find it interesting. I find it very, very scientific as well, which is the reason I continued to finish the 5.5 years course, and I am actively into research. I have now shifted my focus of research to Ayurveda completely, uh, and uh, uh, and I try to my research focuses on what would be of use to Ayurveda. So that's
Through
my
physics.
yeah. So you are also asking about how I relate physics with Ayurveda. Uh, Physics is very closely related to modern medicine. People know about the technological inputs that physics has given, either to for studying the biological system, or to improve the diagnosis, or to improve the treatment. But what people probably are not too much aware is that the fundamental philosophy of how a biological system is looked at and understood is a contribution from physics. So there are two branches in physics. One is called the classical physics or Newtonian physics. The other is the quantum physics.
Physics, yes.
So the way classical physics looks at, see, physics is nothing but study of nature, right? Understanding the nature, understanding the reality, right? So classical physics understands the reality based on, it's called deterministic physics, and it considers nature as being made up of discrete objects, which can be reduced. So like larger objects can be reduced to smaller ones, and these objects are expected to behave in a very deterministic way following the physical laws. Now this worldview, so this is called a worldview, this worldview has given rise to the way that modern medicine and biology understands the human system. So a human system is understood in terms of structures. Just like anything physical in the in the universe is made up of atoms, that's the fundamental entity, right? So our physical bodies are also made up of atoms. So you have atoms, then atoms make molecules, molecules make organelles, organelles make cells, then you have the tissues and organs, organ system, and then you have the entire system. So this viewpoint, this way of understanding the human system is basically a contribution from physics, a worldview of classical physics, right? Now, the worldview of quantum physics is entirely different. Whereas classical physics talks about discreteness, right? Quantum physics talks about interconnectedness. It talks about energy pervading everything, and even matter is considered a condensed form of energy. So everything is, when you say energy, when you say waves, you know, there is a connectivity. You don't have to be a scientist. Yeah, you can easily visualize. So when you say a wave, when you say energy, it's in the form of a wave, right? So there is a continuity. So if you have a particle here and then the wave goes there like that, and then you have a particle there, these two are connected by this. So quantum physics talks about connectivity, right? So the worldview of quantum physics is very different to the worldview of classical physics. Although this worldview is yet to have its repercussions in biology, there's a lot of interest and a lot of work, very interesting work going on, trying to see how quantum worldview and quantum concepts of quantum physics can be used to understand biology. But when it comes to Ayurveda, of course, you know, quantum physics is a cutting edge science, and you know, these experiments are done under very specific experimental conditions. So you know, you cannot draw correlation between Ayurveda and this. There is no need as well. You don't have to do it to make that Ayurveda is scientific. There's no need. But what is of interest is the worldview of quantum physics is very similar to the worldview of Vedas. See, Vedas it refers to science, and one of the major interest in Vedas is to understand nature. See, in fact, you will find this interest in wanting to understand nature in all civilizations, right? It's not only to India or West, you know, all civilizations, because that's man's curiosity, right? So the way Vedas look at the world is in terms of connectivity, right? So it says that, you know, the entire world is a consciousness, and we all have descended from the consciousness. So we are all connected not only to each other, but connected to the entire cosmos, connected to the. So this connectivity, this is something that's common between the quantum worldview and the worldview of Vedas, which is used in Ayurveda to understand the human system. So the human system is understood as a connected, as a networked entity. So it's not that the cells are sitting somewhere and then, you know, mind is working somewhere. No, everything is connected. It's beautifully connected, and then the entire human system is connected to the environment, connected to the cosmos. So this is where, you know, that the worldview of quantum physics comes into play. The way Ayurveda understands the world, and the way it has applied that knowledge to understand the biological system. So this is where there's a subtle connection. And you see this when Ayurvedic doctors treat the patients, you see how they are looking at the entire system as a
holistic approach towards
absolutely.
the treatment or even the diagnosis of the patient.
Yes, yes.
So now we are going to be understanding more deep about how physics has been applied in her research to understand the Ayurvedic principles. Ma'am, as we all know, Ayurveda is based on Tridosha Siddhanta, like Vata, Pitta and Kapha. For example, if we want to do a Prakriti analysis, body constitution assessment of a person, we always first analyze the Vata, Pitta, Kapha status of the body. Or even while treating a patient, while selecting a drug, in any conditions, Tridosha Siddhanta is very important as far as Ayurvedic principle is concerned. So, is it possible for you to explain more about this Siddhanta as far as relation of physics towards this Siddhanta?
See, what you said is absolutely right. You know, the Tridoshas run as an undercurrent to to everything in Ayurveda, be it in understanding the health, be it in understanding the pathophysiology, be it in diagnosis, be it in treatment. So when I started studying Ayurveda, the first obstacle was, you know, what exactly is this Vata, Pitta and Kapha? This still is an important question, you know, that's always asked by scientists and allopathic doctors. What
How
is
you
it?
can prove Vata, Pitta,
Can
Kapha?
you
Because
measure?
can you measure and can you see where are they? You know?
Yeah.
Something.
So my first, I mean, I had to understand what is Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Uh, so the way I understood was, you know, as I said, from the clinic. So you have, let's take the example of Parkinson's disease, where the movement is increased,
Yes.
right? That's a Vata Vyadhi, right? And stroke, where the movement is reduced, that is also a Vata Vyadhi. So you have two different, entirely diametrically opposite clinical symptoms. Both are Vata Vyadhis. If you look at the treatments are different, right? So for me, this was very interesting. And because if you read the textbook, they will simply say this is Vata Vyadhi.
Vata Vyadhi, yeah.
What makes it Vata Vyadhi? It was then I understood that Vata is, you know, it has different parameters under them. So you have the shloka, you know, Vata is, you know, Tatra, Ruksha, Lagu, Shita, Kara, Sukshma, Chala. All these I realized are biophysical. Many of them are biophysical properties.
Okay.
Ruksha means dryness, right? Shita is
Cold.
relates to temperature.
Yeah.
Kara means roughness,
Rough, yeah.
right? And Chalatvam is mobility,
Mobility.
right? And so what I realized, and just to explain to myself what exactly these are, uh, what I found was that what Ayurveda has done is that it has made a functional classification. So if you look at modern medicine, they have a structural classification.
Here it's
So the entire,
manifestation.
yeah, so the entire human system in modern medicine is classified based on structures. So you have the digestive system, you have the cardiovascular system, and so on. So in a digestive system, you put together organs, organs are grouped together. All these contribute to the function of digestion. So all organs which contribute to a particular function are grouped together. So this is the way that modern medicine has grouped, classified. Now if you look at Ayurveda, they have classified it based on functions. And they have identified three major functions. One is movement, the other is metabolism and transformation, the third is the physical, the growth, right? And in the context of Ayurveda, these are called Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Now what if this just has remained a functional classification? I don't think Ayurveda would be a successful clinical medicine. What has made it a successful clinical medicine is what comes within this category. So for example, if you look at the parameters which comes under Vata, many of them are biophysical parameters. So they talk about uh, elasticity, stiffness, dryness, roughness, coarseness, viscoelasticity. They also talk about temperature and pH. So Ayurveda is, what it seems to have done is it has identified three major functions in the body, or functions which according to it is very important, and it has put under these, grouped under these certain parameters which impact these functions. So for example, you take dryness. When dryness changes, it's going to affect movement, right? Imagine heart which is constantly pumping, right? Imagine what will happen if it becomes dry. Its movement is going to be affected. You have fluidity. Imagine what happens if the blood becomes thick, the fluidity changes. then the entire biological process is going to be affected, because the entire function of blood is to flow through the body and then give the cells the nutrients it requires.
Yes.
So it's a very different way of understanding the human system, but it's something that works, right? So Ayurveda is talking of biophysical parameters. It has grouped these under, some of them are biophysical in nature, some of them are physiological, like pH and temperature. And the beauty is that all these parameters are connected with each other.
Yes.
So for example, dryness is a very important parameter under Vata, right? If dryness increases, it's going to increase temperature, which comes under Pitta,
Yes.
right? Now if temperature increases, it's going to change elasticity, it's going to change the viscosity, it's going to change the fluidity, it's going to change lot of parameters. So you think that there is only dryness, there's a change in dryness, but then it's going to have repercussions in many parameters, and these are parameters that are applicable at all levels of the structural organization. So for example, dryness, you can see it at the level of the cell, you can see it at the level of the organ, at the level of the tissue, at the level of the entire organism. We have dry skin.
Yes.
Okay, so Ayurveda is talking about parameters which are applicable to at all levels of the structural organization, and many of these parameters are biophysical in nature. Now some of these, there is a lot of interest in modern medicine to look at biophysical parameters, especially in the context of tumors. They are considering stiffness of cells as a biomarker for cancer. So there's a lot of increasing interest as modern medicine is also trying to come up with more and more parameters and biomarkers to understand the pathophysiology. So when you say biophysical parameters, it's not difficult to measure them. It's just that Ayurveda talks about parameters which as yet are not of interest in modern medicine. But it doesn't discredit them in any way. So and these are you can measure dryness, you can measure viscosity, you can measure elasticity. Why not?
Yes.
You can measure pH, you can measure
There can be a
temperature.
comparison, of course.
Yeah. So Ayurveda is talking about tangible parameters, which can be measured, which it's not difficult to measure. So
Definitely there is a relation.
there is definitely a relation.
Yes.
Because biology, you have physics in biology, you have mathematics in biology, you have chemistry. These are, I have always felt, I think the more as I am aging, I also feel all these demarcations we have about subjects is more for our own convenience, right? To make
Keep us
things
in the comfort
logistically
zone.
easy. But then, at another level, when you look down, there is no delinking.
All are interconnected.
All are interconnected, and there's more than one way to look at things. It's very naive. It's very naive to think that there is only one way to look at things.
Of course.
Yeah.
And people like you will definitely support this thought process of Ayurvedic physicians and help them to, be more confident to practice. And because physics is one part where Ayurveda has not so much developed, or you can say maybe that time they didn't find the need to do that, or there were, as you said, there were no technological support was not there, so they could not do that. So this
No,
will
but then
definitely help us to
Vaiseshika Darshana, Nyaya Darshana, they are all fundamentals of Ayurveda. And so they were talking about physics even in those days, maybe not in the language that's being talked about.
technical language.
Yeah, but then as I said, physics is study of nature, and but there is absolutely no reason at all for Ayurvedic doctors to not feel confident. They are trained in one of the most sophisticated
Yes.
science, and I simply can't believe why they should not have the confidence. They are sitting over a treasure house of information and knowledge, and they should consider themselves lucky that they are trained in it. I feel in a way I feel unlucky because I studied Ayurveda only when I was 41, and I feel that what if I had studied even earlier. So there is absolutely no reason for them to feel any complex, and they are trained to be Vaidyas, and there's a lot of demand
Yeah,
from the
of
public
course.
for
There's a lot of
Ayurveda,
demand.
and they should rise up to the situation. If they do not do it now, they lose the chance.
Yes, yes.
You know, and there is a
And
lot of interest.
results also are there is a lot of interest, results also are there, and as you said, reproducible interest, results are there.
Yeah.
So that makes more and more confident even to the public, you know.
Yeah. I think what is also important is documenting. They need to, it's because our acharyas documented the clinical observations, we have these books.
Yes, yes.
So it is the duty of the present day Ayurvedic doctors also to document the clinical cases. It's very important.
It's one main point to be noted. So, ma'am, now we have known most of your career, academic career, I should say, and how you have excelled in that, and so many obstacles that you have been taking over this. Your family life, your personal life, your career life is almost, there is some things which could have been missed out as well. But at this stage of your life, do you have also some other interests, or which every person needs or has as hobbies or interests, wherein a person could relax and feel more good about it?
Well, I relax in my work. The
Okay.
work never tires me out, because I go to the lab. I am in the lab by 6:15 in the morning,
Wow.
and you know,
Amazing.
I had to force myself to come out of the lab, because I enjoy what I do. And when you do what you when you enjoy what you do,
Yes.
then it doesn't tire you
So it
out.
has become like a passion of your
Yeah,
life.
it's
It's a
work is
passion.
relax.
Yes.
Work is relaxation for me. But that said, I do have other interests. In fact, I wanted to become a musician and an artist,
Oh.
and so I am very much interested in art. I'm also voracious reader. I like reading, and history is my passion, and music. I'm actually trained in vocal Carnatic music, and I'm also trained in Veena, and for the past 2 years I'm learning violin as well.
Wow.
And
So much of time you are
I think
actually,
time management is very important.
yeah, key, you can say.
It's very important, and staying healthy is very important.
Yes, to do all
Health
this.
health is fundamental, and so Ayurveda has helped me to be healthy, and which is why I'm able to do what I'm doing now. So in fact, I get up very early in the morning. I wake up at 2:45 in the morning, and I'm off the bed by at 3. So I practice music in the morning, my vocal and this thing. So in fact, I had a long break of nearly 25 odd years, when I was completely out of touch with the music. Now I have restarted it, and
Amazing.
it's very relaxing as well. And what else can I say? I mean, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to be able to do what I wanted to
All
do.
what you want to
And
do. Yes.
yes, I have faced some problems, but then that only you need to face problems.
Yeah, of
Otherwise, life
course.
is not
Yes.
fun. And it makes you discover about yourself, and it makes you even stronger,
More confident.
more confident, and so.
So, thank you so much, ma'am. We are very much fortunate enough to have you here, as I told you, in the nice land of Goa in Panjim. And I hope you enjoy your stay in Panjim with the hospitality of Goans. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.